Okay, well, hi everyone, and thank you very much for watching or listening. Liam Hartree back with you today with another episode of the Simply Inspired podcast. And today I've got a very inspirational, very fascinating guest joining the show, Mr. Rob Brooks, who is an ultra marathon runner who's competed in some of the toughest races around. We're talking about Dragon's Back, we're talking about an Arctic Ultra, we're talking about quite a few of the toughest races you can do. And he's not only competed in these once, but in many cases more than once as well. So we're going to be talking about his journey through running, these incredible distances, over 200 miles in some cases, what drives a person to do that, some of the lessons he's learned along the way, the mindset that it takes to compete in such a high level in one of the toughest sports in the world. We'll be talking about the infamous spine race, which Rob has obviously run on several occasions as well. You can clarify how many for us in just a moment. So stay tuned, everyone, and thank you for watching. And Rob, thank you so much for taking time out of your day for this, mate. I really appreciate that, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Liam. It's good to be here.
It's a pleasure. So, getting into things from the beginning, we'll talk about running, we'll talk about everything with that shortly. But just to get a feel for what inspired you to do this, when we go back to your sort of early life and everything and where you come from originally, was sports something that was always part of your life back then, or was it something that came into your life at a later date?
So, when I was young, I was always quite sporty and active, and I ran quite a bit when I was at school, up until about the age of probably around about 18. And then once I sort of got into those years, other things in my life became more important. So the running took a bit of a backseat. So I sporadically ran a little bit over the years, but nothing serious. Um, so I only really got back into it, I would say, probably in my sort of mid 30s. So I'm 48 now, and I would say I was probably about 33, maybe 34, where I just got to a point in my life really where I didn't feel particularly healthy and good in myself. I just felt a sort of bit run down. I was probably drinking a little bit more than I should have done. I used to smoke back then as well. So really the main reason that I got back into running wasn't to be competitive or to do all of these races that I do now. It was just to be more healthy, really, just to have a healthier, more active lifestyle. So I just started off basically just going out for a few runs, and absolutely feeling dreadful when I got back. Even just running 2 or 3 miles, I got back and couldn't breathe, which wasn't great. But sort of, I think once you persevere and you get past those few initial runs, and you get into a bit more of a sort of habit, I guess, it does definitely become easier. So I did that for a few years, really, just sort of to get a little bit more healthier. And then I sort of started thinking, well, I had no idea in terms of how fast I was compared to other people. Sort of back then, Garmin's didn't really exist. I didn't used to time me runs. I had a vague idea of how far I had run, but not really anything to sort of back it up. So I thought, well, I'll try enter in a race. So there's a local running club beside where I live called Saltwell Harriers, which I'm now a member of. So they do a 10K road race. So I thought I'll just enter that and just see if I can do it. And at that point in time, I had never run 10K. So that was a question whether I could actually do the distance. So yeah, I entered the race, and yeah, I didn't set the world on fire, but I got through it okay. I think I finished around about sort of middle of the pack. So certainly nowhere near the front, but I didn't disgrace myself either. So just sort of built it up from there, really, and got more into the sort of, I guess, a bit more competitive in racing, sort of going forwards from there.
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. I mean, it's a funny thing, isn't it? When I speak to quite a few people on the ultra scene, it often starts that way. It often starts small. They don't have these sort of big expectations of, I'm going to
Mhm.
do this, I'm going to do that. And that is amazing. So obviously you ran this 10K. What was the realization? I mean, it probably wasn't an overnight thing, but the realization of wanting to push yourself further again, maybe not all the way to ultras, but I'm just talking about that mental shift of like, okay, I enjoy this. I'm not bad at this. To actually, I think I can take this a bit further, or, or I wonder how far I can go. If you get what I mean with that sort of mental switch up there.
Yeah, so it definitely didn't happen straight away. So yeah, after I had done the race, I was quite sore afterwards, and I injured my knee a little bit as well. So didn't do any running for a little bit after that. But I started talking to other people, and they says, "Oh, you should join a running club. You should join the Saltwell Harriers." And back when I was a kid, running clubs were quite exclusive, and really, if you wanted to join a running club, you had to be pretty fast, almost sort of elite level, really. You're sort of like talking about running a 5K in like 16, 17 minutes. So they weren't very sort of inclusive. But then people are saying, "Oh, well, things have changed over the years, and you don't have to be as fast to run them, and it'll sort of bring your training on." So I made some inquiries, and one of the things that the running clubs put on, they do the cross-country season. So cross-country is basically running off-road on muddy fields, normally with a few hills in the depths of winter. So I used to run cross-country at school, and I quite enjoyed it. And so I thought, yeah, well, I'll join Saltwell Harriers, and I'll sign up and I'll do a cross-country race. So I signed up, did it the day that I signed up. And it's quite funny because in cross-country, you've got what they call the pack. So they've got a slow pack, a medium pack, and a fast pack. And what happens is everyone starts off in the slow pack, and then they have some criteria. So it's normally at the minute you finish in a certain percentage, so like the top 10% of the field, and then you move up to the pack, to the medium pack, and then the fast pack if you're fast enough. And then there's a delay, so the medium pack start 2.5 minutes behind the slow pack, and the fast pack 2.5 minutes behind again. So I naively thought, I've done okay in this sort of 10K. I think I could do quite well in the slow pack, imagining there'll be lots of slow runners in it. So yeah, the race started off, and I realised quite quickly that there was lots of fast runners in the slow pack as well, and I certainly wasn't going to be anywhere near the front of it. But I enjoyed it. Again, didn't set the world on fire with it, but I quite enjoyed the experience, and it just gave us a little bit of a motivation, really, to think, actually, I do quite enjoy racing. I enjoy the competitive element of it. I've never really done any type of proper training. I'm just sort of going running around the streets at more or less the same pace, and not really sort of pushing myself. So being in the club was a real instigator for that. So what normally happens when you're in a running club, you sort of find that you're similar pace to certain people in the club, and then that adds a little bit of competition. So you do these races and internal training that gives you a little bit of competition. I want to beat this person. And once you start getting a little bit fitness, and I started doing a bit more focused training, so sessions and things like that, and started to get a bit faster, and sort of move up the ranks in the races and sort of things that I was doing. And I suppose once I had done that, cross-country races are normally around out the 10K distance as well. So I thought, oh, I'll step up the distance, and I would like to run something a bit further. So instead of taking the logical progression of doing a half marathon, I thought I'll try a full marathon. And that absolutely terrified us to start off with. And again, I used to think perception was, if you run marathons, you have to be a super elite runner and really, really fast and efficient. And that was always the perception. And again, I just thought, well, yeah, I looked at some marathon results and looked at the sort of times. And again, I knew I wasn't going to be certainly winning them or breaking any course records or anything like that. But I thought, based on my 10K time, if I do the training, I should at least be able to get around it. Didn't really have any time aspirations in mind. So I thought I'd try it in the Edinburgh Marathon, because I just really thought as well, why wouldn't I be able to complete a marathon? If I can run 10K, then I can train myself to run 26 miles. Is there any reason why I shouldn't be able to do that? And apart from obviously doing the work, I couldn't think of a reason why not. So I thought, let's just have a go at it. So I built up my training. I got up to about 18 miles in training, and that was quite difficult the first time I did that. It's quite intimidating when you're first starting off, from just being able to run 6 miles to building up every week, running a little bit further and a little bit further. And every time I felt I could not run any further than that. So I'll get to 16 miles and thinking, I don't know how I could run another 10 miles. So 18 miles was the furthest I got in my training. And I went off and I did Edinburgh Marathon. And it was quite an interesting race. I had all of these great ideas about what I would eat and drink, and how much I would eat and drink, and use of gels and things like that. And I think I ended up getting hyponatremia in the end because I just drank far too much. I was thinking I'll drink water at every aid station. It was quite a hot day. And I got to the end of the marathon. I basically got everything that could have went wrong probably went wrong. My eating strategy didn't work. My drinking strategy failed. I got cramp probably after about 16 miles. I walked lots of it, but I got to the end and I felt absolutely terrible. And I just thought this is how you feel when you finish a marathon. And then I had to lay down for a couple of hours afterwards. But then I thought I'd pick myself up and afterwards thought quite quickly, instead of, yeah, I never want to do that again. I thought, well, I've done one now. I know that I can run the distance. How can I run a faster marathon, basically? And I sort of just took it from there and started again doing a bit more focused training. And then that became my focus for a few years. It was marathon training. So it was a spring marathon and an autumn marathon I used to try and target and build up to breaking time barriers. And you always have a time goal in mind. So 3 hours was always a big thing to sort of break 3 hours in the marathon. And I remember the first time that I did that. In a way, it was good because it was a great feeling breaking 3 hours. But the last 6 miles were absolute hell. I had cramp everywhere you could get cramp, and I was just hanging on, trying to push to get to sort of under 3 hours. And I managed it just, I think I ran about 2:58 or something like that. And at the time I was doing lots of other sort of road races. Well, I used to race quite regularly, so I was doing quite a lot of 5Ks, hog runs, 10Ks, half marathon. I used to do things like the Great North Run quite regularly as well, but it was all on road at that point in time. So yes, that's sort of probably synopsis of me road running days.
Absolutely amazing. I mean, yeah, building up the levels is great to hear about that. Now, sure, we'll delve into the ultra side of things. Before we do, one other quick question about this time. Obviously, you mentioned at the beginning, not feeling healthy and smoking and drinking and not living the best lifestyle. Obviously, that went out the way, which is great. But did you start to notice other changes in other parts of your life outside of running directly? Because obviously, it takes a lot of discipline, a lot of I want to say fortitude and sort of mental strength and physical strength to do what you do. So I wondered if that started to make positive changes in your work or your family or other things that you're comfortable to mention, and if it sort of crossed over into other things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely did. So I didn't get that. I moved away from quite often I would feel tired and lethargic. Back in those days and unhealthy, I would wake up and just not feel that great. So once I started running, yeah, I still felt tired from the runs. Obviously, when I did a hard session, I would feel tired, but it was a different type of tiredness. It was a content type of tiredness. It was I feel tired, but I've done something, so I deserve to feel tired. But then overall, me energy levels definitely increased, and my mental health and that increased as well because I was getting outdoors more. Because I love the outdoors. I love being outside and doing not just running, lots of other outdoor activities as well. So I think being outdoors and just the dopamine levels that you get when you run, that definitely helped in a lot of areas in my life as well. I think one of the challenges that I did have, especially in the early days, was balancing out that workload as well. So it's balancing your training with your recovery, but then also your day-to-day life as well. So sort of family life and work as well. So that was a challenge, and I always tried to fit me running in and around other things, so it wasn't sort of as disruptive. So things like running to work, as an example. That was I worked in different places, but it was between sort of 7 and 10 miles to work either way, so I could do that a lot of the time, and I still do run on my dinner time. So that sort of makes a break in the working day, and then I always feel better in the afternoon rather than sometimes you just get that natural afternoon lethargy, don't you, in the day. But I feel if I run at dinner time, it makes us feel more alive and sort of active in the afternoons. And again, like I say, just in general. So yes, definitely.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, that was something I was curious to know about is the whole time management thing because that takes a lot of focus as well. How many miles do you do sort of a week? Well, obviously it'd be different now, but I mean, as you built it up, because you said earlier you weren't really keeping track of it, but then you obviously started keeping track of it more with the times. So what
Yeah.
are you sort of looking at with that because it's behind the scenes and people don't necessarily see that side of it?
So I mean, I'm not massively a high mileage runner. So I would say I never really have an average week because it depends on what I'm training for and what my sort of my pattern is. But I would say on average, it would probably be around about 50 miles. So I guess given the distances that I'm doing now, it's not a massive number. But one of the things that I've learned over the years is you don't have to be running massive mileage. So maybe at the elite level, so if you're the likes of Elliot Kipchoge, who's doing 120 miles, 130-mile weeks at that level, then potentially yes. But I would say certainly for most people, for the vast majority of people, you don't need to be doing that type of mileage to be successful. It's more about quality, I would say. So yeah, on it definitely varies and it depends on what I do. But on average, I would say roughly I'm probably about 50 miles a week.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I have heard a few people say that, a few runners I've interviewed say that at the very high levels, and it's not always what you expect, but it's fascinating. Quality over quantity. I mean, it makes sense. So, jumping into the ultra side of things, obviously you were doing these marathons. You did that special time that you mentioned. Very good. And then
Mhm.
you obviously wanted to push yourself a bit further. So let's just talk before we get into any specific ultras, where you first came across the idea of doing that and where the inspiration came from to do an ultra.
Yeah, so I can't remember where I found out about the book, but I read the book called Marathon Man, or maybe Ultra Marathon Man, by a guy called Dean Karnazes. So he's an American ultra runner, and it basically details his life story of being probably quite similar background to myself, being sort of unhealthy, and then going off, and then he details all of these ultra races that he's done. So things like Western States 100-miler and other different running feats and challenges. And I remember reading the book and just being absolutely blown away. I didn't really know ultra running was a thing back then. I was thinking, yeah, I can't imagine anyone running more than 26 miles. How could you physically run more than that? I just thought it was impossible. And just 100 miles, it was just, I couldn't understand how someone could run that far, especially in mountains as well. So it just totally blew us away. And I guess with a lot of things, at first it was, yeah, I could never run that. I could never run 100 miles. It's just impossible. And then, as with a lot of these things, it creeps into your psyche and you just start thinking, I wonder if I could run 100 miles, or even not even 100 miles, maybe even 50 miles. I wonder if I could like push myself. And then it's the same sort of thought process. I thought, well, why wouldn't I be able to do it? And again, back then, ultra running certainly wasn't as big as it is now, but there were still plenty of people doing it. It was a little bit more underground. It wasn't sort of in the mainstream news or anything like that. But again, I did a little bit of digging and seeing what races there were sort of around, and I found out there was a race called the Highland Fling, which is a 53-mile race up in Scotland on the West Highland Way. So it's the first 53 miles of the West Highland Way, basically. So I thought, well, that sounds like something that's, yeah, it's twice the distance of a marathon, but it's not quite 100 miles. Could I do that race? Do you know what I mean? Have I got it sort of in us? And then again, that sort of started getting into me psyche. So I thought, yeah, let's sign up and give it a go. What's the worst thing that could happen? So yeah, so that was my first ultra.
Absolutely amazing. And I suppose a very broad question here, but how did it go for you? What was your experience of that running that distance? That's
Yeah, so again, it didn't go disastrously, but it didn't go as well as I would have liked it to. So I had a walk run strategy, which quite soon turned into a walk strategy, and I just didn't know whether I could physically run that distance. Like I say, when I finished a marathon, you get to the end of a marathon, most people in you think like, I can't run another 100 meters, never mind another 26 miles. But the thing with these longer races is that you're obviously not running them at that pace, and that makes a big difference. And one of the other things that makes a big difference is you can stop. So and most people who run a marathon. Generally speaking, people don't tend to stop unless you've got a stitch or a cramp or something like that. People tend to run the whole thing, whereas ultras, it's quite normal, and certainly in the long ultras, you have to stop. You kind of just sort of run the whole thing, and it's amazing. One of the things I discovered is how much you can recover just by even just sitting down for 1 or 2 minutes, and also walking as well. So how much we can recover just by walking something. And again, with a lot of ultras, the terrain dictates that you have to walk on anyway, because it's almost impossible to run. And so on that race, there's a section along the banks of Loch Lomond that's quite rocky and rooty. So it's not any big climbs, but you're constantly going up and down little climbs, clambering over trees and scrambling over tree roots and things like that. So it's, I mean, you could run it, but you would use more energy running it than you would sort of walking it. So that's you find that's a more efficient way of traveling. So yeah, the first race started, I was sort of walk, run, and then when I got to that section, I never really ran again. After that, I just sort of walked to the end, and I was absolutely knackered by the time I got to the end. And I can't remember what time I did it. I mean, it was well within the cutoffs. I think it was about 12 and a half hours or something like that. So it was miles away from the winning time. I think the leaders do it in something like 7.5 hours. But at the same time, I wasn't at the back, so I was sort of around about mid-pack. So similar type of thing. It was like, yeah, this hasn't went amazingly, but it hasn't went disastrously. I've done it. I've done 53 miles. I've completed an ultra. And then I had to start about an hour and a half with cramp to get back to the start. So that was an experience in itself. But yeah, so yeah, things could have went better, but things could have certainly went a lot worse. I didn't have any disasters.
Yeah. I like the optimism that you have to these things. I do mean that genuinely as a compliment because you take a lot of that sort of anxiety and things that a lot of people would have out of it by having a positive outlook, which is cool. I'll come back to that shortly. But before we do, in terms of obviously into the 100 miles and beyond, basically just carry on with the progression if you don't mind, just with the timeline of these because shortly we'll come to like the spine race and some of the not sleeping and the extreme elements and some of the absolutely crazy stuff. I'm basically just building into that. So after the 52 miles, what happened next? And we'll go from there, please.
Yeah. So as I say, like up to then, me years for a number of years, probably 3 or 4 years, I've been really focused on road racing and marathon and times. And I got to a point, as does everyone, where you reach a bit of a plateau. So you go through various different plateaus. So I had went through a few, and then once you reach a plateau to get to the next level, you have to do something different. So you either have to run more miles or more quality in more targeted sessions. And then those increases become smaller as well. So when you first start off running, you see some positive changes and impact, and your times come down quite quickly. But then when you get, especially when you've been running for a few years, it becomes harder and harder. And I was entering races and I just wasn't feeling as motivated. So I had set some, certainly not setting the world on fire with me times, but I had got down, I had run 2:55 in the marathon a few times. And sort of, I think I ran 1:16 in the Great North Run. And just to get down from those times, it was like an order of magnitude to get down any further. And then you're just talking about minutes. Yeah, I'm not going to be taking like 10 minutes off me half marathon time. Then it's maybe a couple of minutes at best. And it sort of, I just lost a little bit of motivation for chasing times all of the time as well. It sort of coincided with getting a bit more into fell running. So in the running club that I'm in, Salvador Harriers, they have quite a lot of people that do fell races. So races in mountains, basically. So in England, they call mountains fells. So you have about the Lake District fells and Pennines, Scotland, in Wales. And I found out about all of these fell races. And as a kid, my dad used to take it on walking holidays. So I used to love going to places like the Cheviots and the Lake District. I used to go there quite often walking. And I would see occasionally people running around thinking they were absolutely nutters because how could you possibly run on that type of terrain? It's impossible. And I always knew there was this thing called fell run, but again, I thought, well, yeah, that's not for me. There's no way I could do anything like that. But then again, as with these things, I started thinking about, well, I like running on the road. I like running in general, and I like the fells. So why can't I sort of run in the fells? So we'd have a local fell race in the Pennines near a place called Stanhope. It's not a long fell race. It's only about 6 miles. And again, not a massive amount of climbing, and it's not a massively steep terrain. But I thought, yeah, I'll enter this race and see how I get on. So I entered it. It shocked us how hard it was, even though it wasn't necessarily really, really steep terrain. Just the ground underfoot, it was a lot different to running on the road. So you're running through peat bogs, you're running through thick heather, you're running uneven terrain, grassy tussocks where you can easily sort of twist an ankle, and sometimes run off a camber on rocky slopes, like around stream beds and crossing streams. So yeah, I thought, yeah, this is harder than I thought it was, but I thought, yeah, I love this. I want to do more of this. And then I started entering fell races. So again, sort of start off with shorter races, sort of In fell races, you have different categories. So you have short, medium, and long. So generally something like a 6 mile race is short, medium is maybe up to about 12 miles or so, and then long is anything above that. And generally speaking, the longest fell race is probably something like Three Peaks, maybe, which is about 24 miles. That's about as far as they go in terms of distance. So I started doing those types of races. So I did things like the Borrowdale Fell Race, lots of races in the Lake District. We'll have an internal club fell race series as well within the Harriers. So it's a little bit of internal competition. So I got into that and I really enjoyed it. And I did that for a few years as well. And then I found out about something called the Bob Graham Round. And it's basically a round in the Lake District, a fell running challenge. It's not a race, it's an individual challenge where you start at the Moot Hall in Keswick and you've got 24 hours to circumnavigate 42 fells around the Lake District. And so it's around about 66 miles and it's about 27,000 feet of climbing. So it's almost the height of Everest from sea level climbing across pretty much all of the largest fells in the Lake District. So I found out about this challenge, and some people in the club had done it. And there was another lad, Paul, who was going to have a go the following year. And again, that started off thinking, yeah, I could never do anything like this. But having supported Paul on his and he got around successfully, again, it creeps into your psyche. I thought, well, I wonder if I could do that. And again, I'd never run anywhere near that distance. Well, the Highland Fling, yeah, was 53 miles, but it's not flat, but it's all pretty much runnable. You haven't really got any sort of big climbs. And then that started creeping into my psyche. So I thought, yeah, could I do a Bob Graham round? And that was my introduction into ultra running.
Wow, that's amazing. The fell running, yeah. I mean, it's a totally different type of terrain, and I noticed that on your website, some of the high elevation stuff you've done. That's
Mhm.
so okay. So that's ultra running. Now jumping into it headlong for a minute. Obviously, the spine race. There's a couple I want to talk about here, and we may not have time to talk about all of them, but there's a couple that I do want to mention. And obviously, the spine race is famous, infamous, possibly a better term for it, and it is an extreme challenge. And I was reading your website and the descriptions you give about some of these things, and the not sleeping and the
Mhm.
harsh terrain and all of this sort of thing, and it's a totally higher level again. So let's talk about that, even though I think we're possibly jumping a little bit forward in time here, but jump into that because a lot of people will want to know, and you've run it more than once as well. So
Mhm.
although it's quite a big question, getting into some of your highlights from that race, some of the things you enjoyed about it, how you overcame the challenges, because one of the things that fascinates me about ultras is it's very much it's sort of an inward thing, even though it's a physical thing. There's as I said earlier, there's a lot of mental strength that you need to do
Mhm.
as well as physical. So that process as well, going for that level of distance, quite a big question. But basically, the spine race in your own words, I think, is the simplest way I can sort of convey
Mhm.
this.
Yeah. So the Spain race I had knew about for quite a long time, and it absolutely terrified us. And I thought there's absolutely no way again I could do anything, or even would want to do anything like that. Why would I want to spend up to 7 days on the Pennine May in the middle of winter, where the weather is potentially atrocious and the conditions under feet are atrocious as well? Large parts of it during the night, just nothing at all appealed to us about it. And as with a lot of things, it creeps into your psyche. So I started doing more other things. So I did my Bob Graham round. I had done the Dragon's Back as well before that. So I'd done multi-day events where you have to manage sleep deprivation, going through the night, those types of things. But the Spain's a different level, really, to anything that I had attempted before, just by the nature of the challenge. The fact that it's a non-stop race, so you don't have the set distance that you need to cover each day. It's up to you how far you travel and where and when you sleep. So outside of racing, I've spent quite a little bit of time in the hills doing something called fast packing, which is basically multi-day adventures where you're carrying everything that you need. So camping equipment, stove, all of those types of food, all of those types of things, and certain routes, which is quite a similar thing to what you're doing on the Spain. So I had a bit of that type of experience. And again, it crept into my psyche. I ran the Cheviot Goat, which is an ultra up in the Cheviots, which is at the minute keeps going up every year. It's about 58 miles. Well, in reality, it's advertised as 58 miles, but really it's 61 miles. That's in the middle of winter, so I had run that, and so I was sort of felt comfortable managing myself in that type of environment. After obviously having that experience and practice, I thought, yeah, let's give it a go. And at first, I thought, should I enter the Challenger? So the Challenger is a shorter version of the full Spain, so it's the first 108 miles of it. I thought, shall I do the Challenger first? And that was my original intention. And then the more I thought about it, I thought, what would I be more happy with? Would I be more happy with doing successfully completing the Challenger or attempting the full Spain and failing and then learning something and then potentially coming back and sort of being successful if I did fail at it? And I decided, yeah, let's just give the full thing a go, because there's certain elements of the full Spain that come into play that I wouldn't necessarily get on the Challenger, sleep being the main one. So some people do sleep on the Challenger, but a lot of people just go all of the way through, so you don't have the multi-day attrition of being out on the trail for, like I say, potentially up to 7 days. So entered it. So one of my other friends as well, Mark Clarkson, he had entered it as well. So that was good because we did quite a lot of training together, going out and practicing doing the miles and going on the route and wrecking different parts of it. So I had originally entered, can't remember dates now, might have been 2020 or so, and then I had to withdraw the week before the race basically because I ended up getting a condition known as Parsonage-Turner syndrome, it's called, which sounds quite scary, but basically it attacks the nerves in your shoulders and your back. So basically, I was in massive amounts of pain, struggling to even walk. So I had to withdraw from the race the week before, and that took quite a long time to get over. I'm still not really probably fully recovered from it now. I still have issues with my shoulders, but I'm sort of mainly over it. So I didn't do it that year. And then the following year was COVID, so it didn't happen then. So it was basically the year after that was where it was finally going to go ahead. So I was quite looking forward to it. I had done quite a bit of training. I felt sort of quite fit. And then about 3 weeks before the race, I got a chest infection, quite a bad chest infection, and wasn't able, obviously, to train. And I had such a violent cough. I ended up coughing so much. I don't know if I broke them, or either broke or fractured my ribs. Which was really, really painful. I was coughing up blood. So again, I was absolutely good because I thought I'm not going to make the start line of the race here. And as I got closer and closer to the race, I was thinking just one more day, see how it feels, see how it feels. So we're still getting quite a bit of pain traveling down to the start line. But I thought again, I just have to give it a go. I thought I'll kind of run. It was too painful to run, but I thought could I walk it basically in the time cutoffs? And I sort of worked it out. If I rested at each checkpoint, you can stay there for a maximum of 8 hours. Thought if I stay at each checkpoint for the 8 hours, rest there as much as I can, try and recover, could I move quickly enough outside of that just by walking to get round? So I think I calculated I would have to move at just over 2 miles an hour to do that, which I thought, I think I can do that. I don't know, but I'm going to give it a try and see how it goes. So yeah, that's sort of basically how it went. So I started off, and yeah, it was painful, but it wasn't painful enough to stop us, and it did sort of get better as it went on. So yeah, I mean, I could talk for ages a bit about the sort of race, but basically they got through the horse, sorry, not the horse, to Hebden Bridge, which is the first checkpoint, and tried to sleep there, lay down for about 3 hours. Couldn't really get much sleep, but I did manage to sort of rest, and then pushed on to Horse, which is the first place that I had with a lot of people again planned to sleep, which is the end of the Challenger race. And yeah, I can remember getting there feeling probably the most tired and exhausted and beat up than I ever had, being the last section going, and there you go, a section called the High Calm Road, which is just a really horrible place. Yeah, I'm sure it's lovely in the summer, but in the middle of winter when it's raining and it's cold and it's windy and you can't see anything, and it just goes on forever and ever, and you've been on your feet for probably about 40 hours by then. That was really hard going. So yeah, I was getting cramp, getting DOMs everywhere, and basically was tired, just thinking, yeah, I don't know how I can go on. But I thought I'm not making any decisions about anything, just go down, try and get as much sleep as I can within the time. I think I planned for, say, about 5 hours if I could, and sort of lay down outside of that. You fat for quite a bit as well. And then you wake up, and one of the things I always find when you do these multi-day things is how much you can recover after relatively little rest and sleep. So I wouldn't say I felt amazing when I woke up, but I certainly felt better than I did when I had went to sleep, and it was daylight by then as well. So I actually felt quite good, and pushed on up Great, and I felt it was quite a nice day as well. And after that, the section has become a little bit more manageable. So like I say, the first section, Hebden, is a little bit too soon to really stop and sleep, but then it's a long way to push on the hose. And I always think, and I suppose the advice I would give to anyone that's thinking of doing the spine is that if you can get the hose in one piece without being absolutely falling apart and not pushing it too hard in the early stages, and give yourself enough time to sort of recover, then you've got a good chance of getting through the rest of the race. So after that, it's around about-ish 40 miles to each checkpoint. And then so 40 miles is still a long way, and it's still going to take a long time for it to cover the distance, but it's a bit more of an achievable target. So that's the way I sort of framed it in my mind, try to break it down. Yeah, just get through. And obviously, you don't think far ahead, I'm going to do the next 40 miles. It's like, okay, I'm going to get to this section. So from Hawes, say, for example, you get to Tarn Hill. So stop there for maybe 10 minutes and sit down, get out of the wind, have some soup shelter, and then push on to the next sort of little enclave or someone's house where there might be someone waiting outside giving you some soup or something like that. So just breaking it down into little chunks like that. And then, yes, I thought it just broke that down all the way till got to Bellingham, which is the last sort of main checkpoint. And there had been a big storm that year, Storm Arwen. So the race was actually diverted. So they had put an additional diversion on earlier around sort of Hadrian's Wall, which extended the distance. But then the section between Bellingham and Burness, they had cut that out. So they basically ferried you up in a car to Burness. So I just framed it then. It's 26 miles over the Cheviots to get back, and the Cheviots is me stamping ground. It's where I go all the time. And that section was just when day broke on that last day, and I knew I only had maybe about 15 miles or so to go on it. It was just an amazing feeling, because at that point in time I thought, yeah, I knew I was going to finish the race then, and it was quite emotional because it had been a long time coming, obviously years coming, and then the fact that if I didn't even know that I was going to make the start line, and now I'm barring a disaster, which luckily there wasn't, and I knew that I was going to get to the finish, and that's just having that realization, that feeling is just one of the most amazing things in the world ever, and one of the reasons I do these races.
Absolutely incredible. I mean, I was reading about this on your website about the calf and and then the ribs and I was reading it. I was just thinking, man, bloody hell, this guy's got some courage, basically. And it really does feed into what I said earlier about the mental fortitude. And what I love about that, and it's not really a question, but just to underpin that, what you said there, what I love about that is, for anyone listening, you said about reframing or sort of framing things a certain way in your mind. And that's a really valuable tip, I think, for anything people do in life. I mean, it doesn't have to be running. It could be, any big challenge that you're taking on of starting your own business or doing something, but how you look at things and how you choose to perceive that challenge. I think that's a pretty good life lesson, to be honest with you, Rob. So, okay, so that's the spine. Now, am I correct in saying you ran the spine again after that?
Yeah, I did. I went back and did it the following year as well. Yeah. Luckily, with no broken ribs that time, under very different conditions as well. So the first year was wet, not too cold, but wet underfoot, really really boggy, slow going. And then the second year, it was totally different. It was frozen underground, which was really good, but really quite deep snow in the Cheviots. But I prefer those conditions. So the second year was amazing. And one of the other big differences, although I ran the first year now and again with sort of different people, the second year I ran it with two lads, so Sean O'Connor and Rich Garland. So we basically did most of the race together. sort of three Jordinos, we call ourselves, because we're all sort of from up here. So that would, again, that made it a different experience. And every time you do these races, you can run the same race and you'll have a completely different experience.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. A different type of challenge. Going back again, I mean, amazing. Now, a couple of other things, a couple of other races to talk about as well, key ones. And I know, like I said, we won't talk about them all. I'd like to talk to you about Dragon's Back, but before we do that, you mentioned about snow there, and I'm actually going to do this one first because snow obviously makes me think. No great surprise to you of the Arctic Ultra that you did. Now, I was reading about this. I have interviewed one or two guys who've done this as well, which their race was in Swedish Lapland, I think, or somewhere around that area.
Yeah.
Not the same for you, but anyway, but yeah, I mean, as if this 260 miles and the sleep deprivation noise wasn't extreme enough, you thought, okay, let's do this in minus, I think it said minus 30 Celsius on your website, which is absolutely crazy. Can you tell us a story about that, please, Rob? Because I was reading your website, and obviously it says on there, that you fell over and you were squashed by your own backpack and everything like this. And I thought, gosh, okay, this is going to be a story to tell. But the same type of thing, because if I narrow in on, this bit happened or this bit happened, we might miss something else. So I opened it up broadly because you were the one who was there, obviously not me. So again, the same type of thing. Some of your favorite moments and how you overcame things that didn't go to plan as well. And I think those two sides would be some great topics.
Yeah, so the race was originally supposed to happen last year. Well, it's supposed to be happening for a few years actually, but with COVID and other things, it hasn't. So this was the first year inaugural running of the race. And like I say, I love being in the mountains, and I've always been fascinated by the poles in the Arctic. And I went on a training course a few years ago with the guy who organises the race, so Phil Brown. He's the race organiser and of the UK Spain as well. And I just enjoyed it, and I thought it was absolutely amazing. And again, I was thinking, could I do this type of race? Could I not? I thought, yeah, I'll go on the training course and let's give it a try. So it's 293 miles basically along a trail called the Kungsleden, which translates to the King's Trail. So it's I guess the Swedish equivalent of our Pennington, their national trail. So a lot of people hike it in the summer, and it's popular for cross-country skiing in the winter. Although people tend not to do the whole thing, they just do sections of it. So beginning of February, the season hasn't officially started, so there's no infrastructure open. So they do have huts along the way where people can stay, but they aren't officially open. Some of them do have emergency rooms where you can go in if you can get in them. If not, sort of snowed shut. But the ethos of the race is self-sufficiency. So along the race, there's only 3 official checkpoints, and all you get at the checkpoint is a resupply. So you get your drop bag there, you get a resupply of fuel, and you get hot water as well. But you have to sleep outside in your tent, so it's totally self-sufficient. You have to carry everything with you. So your tent, sleeping bag, cooking equipment, food, camping equipment, everything. And you can carry it in a backpack if you want, and one person did, but most people carry what they call a pulk. So a pulk is like a sledge, if you think of a sledge, pulling a sledge behind you, because you're carrying potentially over 30 kilograms worth of kit, and doing it on cross-country skis as well. So some of these other races in the Arctic, people do them on foot, and the trails that they run on are quite well groomed. So they've had people skiing on them, they've had sleighs going on, people mushing dogs over them, they've even had vehicles driving over them. So the snow is quite hard and compact, so it makes it easier for sort of run on. But because it was so early in the season and because of the nature of the trail, it was pretty deep snow in most of the trails. So really doing it on skis is the only feasible option, or maybe snowshoes, but skis is a bit more optimum. So I'm not a skier, I haven't got a skiing background. So that was a bit of a learning curve as well. Skiing isn't massively technical, but when you're coming downhill, as I'll come to in a second, you do have to, you have got a little bit of skill. So the 14 of us started off the race in Abisko, and we were told before the race started, it's the inaugural race of the year, no one knows if it's even possible. So Phil was saying, yeah, this is probably one of the hardest, if not the hardest races in the world. Don't even know if it's possible for anyone to complete it. And we'll have made provisions for it not finishing in the end, which was a place called Hemavan, if it comes to that. So yes, bit apprehensive setting off, but also excited because it's close to a real adventure, I think, as you could probably have. Because you do things like the Spain and the Dragon's Back, and yeah, they are really, really hard races, but people have done them before. You know that it's possible, and you can read about people's experiences and how long it's taken people to do them. So we didn't have any of that. We were pioneers doing this race. So I tried to work out beforehand, but I thought it was actually physically possible for it to move quickly enough to get to the end. I came up with a rough schedule of if I could move 36 miles a day, 60k, move for around about 18 hours a day and rest for 6. So try and sleep 3 hours a day and an hour and a half each side of that to stop, put the tent up, melt snow, because that's the only way that you can get water, because obviously everything's frozen. And that was my plan. And basically started off and made a wrong turn pretty much straight away. So the navigation was a bit more trickier than I had expected, and I got a little bit more complacent. So we had a GBX track, but Phil said beforehand, don't rely completely on the GBX track. It's just loosely plotted. And on the map, there's actually 2 trails for the Crunch Lake. And so they have a summer trail and a winter trail. So the summer trail obviously doesn't go over any lakes. Well, it sort of does, but you have to row across them. And it'll go tends to be more sort of higher ground, steeper ground, whereas the winter trail sometimes is a little bit longer in places, but it's a bit more flat. So basically took the wrong trail and ended up blasting up the wrong trail for about half an hour before I realised. So then kind of basically cut across a load of birch forest with deep snow, going across boardwalk and suspension bridges, which aren't really designed for skiing over and pulling trucks over. So that was quite an early mishap, but we managed to get back on the trail and then climbed up to a mountain hut, which they had a few people there, basically a safety team. So there was a medic in there who basically just assesses, have you got, are your fingers okay? You got any signs of frostnip or frostbite? Are you okay to continue, basically? So it was nighttime by the time I got there. So I pushed on for a little bit and got to the top of the pass, which is the highest point. So that's about 1,150 meters. So it's quite high, given the fact to start off at about 400 meters at Bisco. So with this trail, obviously it's not flat as well. You have got lots of undulation, which makes it more challenging as well. So I spent a little bit of time at the hut there to try and get a few hours sleep. And then came down from there through quite deep snow. And yeah, I sort of felt okay going down at first, and then I just lost control and went flying headfirst into the snow. And if anyone that's skied before, even just on normal skis, if you fall over and you get trapped in deep snow, it can be quite difficult to move, because obviously you've got your skis on your feet and you've got the snow pinning you down. So I had that, but then the pulk attaches at your waist through a metal harness, basically, and it makes it rigid. And the reason for that is when you're coming down something, it means that the pulk doesn't basically run away in front of you and then drag you down the hill, but it does push you down the hill. And so that had us pinned to the floor, basically. And it took us about 45 minutes to get out of that situation. Yeah, it was about minus 30 degrees. So I just couldn't move, basically, to start off with. So I had to try and sort of unclip the carabiners to maneuver the pulk away from us, which I managed to do eventually. The pulk's still trying to go downhill, so I still had to keep a hold of it and try and push it, else I don't think I would have ever seen it again. And then get my feet out from underneath the pulk, sort of unclip my skis, move those out of the way, try and swing the pulk round so it was facing across the hill rather than down it. And then one of my ski poles had disappeared underneath the snow, so it took us a little while to dig that out as well. So yes, I found that, managed to retrieve it, and then proceeded a little bit more gingerly down the slope until I got to the bottom of it. So I had to basically just walk it down, pulling the pulk with my hands. And then I'd wasted a load of time then, lost at least 45 minutes, and I was thinking, don't know where anyone else is in the race. No one had passed us. I didn't know who was behind us. I didn't know who was in front of us. And I thought, I'm not going to make the cut-off at the next hut. And I think, is the race going to end here? Am I going to get timed out? And then I got a message on the tracker to say that cut-off had been extended by, I think it was an hour and a half. So I thought, well, it's been extended. I can push on. I can carry on. So I carried on. I had a few kit malfunctions in this time as well. So one of the mistakes, I made lots of mistakes in this race, which I've learned from. One of the biggest mistakes was not managing my hands properly. So when you're doing these races, you have to wear big, thick gloves, obviously, to protect your hands. And in order to be able to do anything, you need dexterity in your fingers, so you have to take them off. And then your hands obviously potentially get cold. And I made the mistake of taking my gloves off and putting them on the ground. And I had been sweating through my hands into my gloves, and that ended up freezing. So basically, my gloves ended up frozen solid. So I had to put them in my bag and get me another big pair of mitts out. And that happened with various other things freezing as well. So I pushed on to the second hut, which was sort of similar to the first one. It's just a little mountain hut where you get sort of a medical checkup. And then I seen someone behind us, and I turned around, and it was a lad called Kev. And he was out miles in front of us, and he had a wrong turn, went over the wrong valley. So he caught up with us, and we got to reach the hut together. And we found out, to our amazement, no one else had been through. So I thought there would have been other people in front of us, but we were the first two. So I stopped there for a little while and then pushed on into the night. And the cutoff of the actual official first checkpoint had then been extended again. And I was thinking, trying to extrapolate it out, I still didn't think it was going to be possible to get there in the time if I didn't sleep. Unless I didn't sleep. But I thought, if I've got potentially another 6 days on the trail, I can't afford to push through the whole night without sleep to get to this checkpoint. And then I've got to sleep sometime. And I made the decision, okay, I'm going to try and reduce me sleeping hours down from 6 to 4 and stop between 11 and 3. So that's what I did. So I got to 11 o'clock, tried to pitch my tent. So I had spilt, one of my flasks had leaked and spilled water on my tent, which then iced it up. So that took a bit of putting up. So I got that up eventually. Tried to light the stove. Stove wouldn't work. It wouldn't pressurize. So it's a petrol stove. So you can't just, not like a gas stove that you just light. You have to pressurize them, and then you prime them, which is basically put a little bit of fuel in the cup, light it, and then it goes up like a fireball. So you don't do that in your tent. It just wouldn't light at all. Well, it did, but it just got like a tiny little trickle of a flame. So I wouldn't be able to dry or defrost anything in the tent. So I thought, well, let's just go in the tent, try and go 2.5 hours sleep, wake up, and then pack everything up and get going again. So woke up after 2.5 hours, and I had put my big mitts inside my sleeping bag to see if I could sort of keep them warm. And they had iced up on the outside, and that hadn't melted. And I think with my body heat, they weren't soaking wet, but they were wet. And they were sort of my last defense. So I thought, oh, this isn't good. And then my boots were completely frozen solid as well. Same reason, I had sweat that came through my feet into my boots, and I couldn't physically get my feet into the boots. And I noticed some of the stitching had started to come away, and there was ice in them as well. So it was just a combination of things really went wrong. I was still mentally in the race. I didn't want to leave. I wasn't ready to leave physically. I felt okay, obviously a bit tired. So I basically used the satellite communicator to send a message. They ended up sending out the Sami, which is the local indigenous people of the area, came out with a snowmobile with a stove and another pair of mitts for us. By that time, I was a bit concerned about my fingers because all my fingertips were numb. So I thought I had, which I did have, frostnip, which is the precursor to frostbite. So I still had they were the right colour, and they weren't sort of hard and waxy, which is a sign of frostbite. I was thinking I can't afford for my fingers to get colder again. And my boots were still frozen, so I tried to defrost my boots for about 45 minutes on the stove in the tent, which I tell you never ever to do, to take a stove in a tent, but that's what you do in these environments. So by about 40 minutes, had defrosted enough for us to actually physically fit them on my feet, but I still couldn't budge the zips. And I thought, like, you know what it is? I've had a great time out here. It's been a real learning experience. But there's just too many things went wrong for us to carry on now. It's too big of a risk. I wasn't most concerned about my fingers, and especially in my feet as well. If my feet sort of went the same way, it was probably going to take us another 12, 13, maybe 14 hours to get to the next checkpoint. And there's literally no one around there for miles. It's maybe 30, 40 miles away from the nearest road. So it's just a too big risk to take. And then I thought, I've had a fantastic experience. And then I was already thinking, yeah, I'll come back next year and I've learned all of these different things and I'll give it another go next year.
Wow, what a story. I mean, I was, yeah, with the frostbite side of things, I was listening carefully because it was sort of reminding me of the Ranulph Fiennes, if I'm saying his name right, where he cut off
Yeah,
his own fingers. And I was just sitting there thinking, Rob, I was thinking, I don't think I've seen your hands yet, and I wonder if all the fingers are still there. But
yeah.
they're all still with us. But no, I mean, yeah, obviously it's not worth your health. And I have interviewed some people who've done like some of the high level mountain climbing, like Everest and things like that, and back, and some of them have had damage from the oxygen deprivation and things like that. And you look at that and you think, well, is that really sort of worth it in the long run? And different people say different things, but I get where you're coming from. So couple of things. We'll go slightly over the time that I said, but we'll keep
Yeah,
it fairly tight for people's attention spans. You know how that goes.
yeah.
Obviously, having done something as extreme as that, and as the spine and Dragon's Back as well, and you've done all of these things, and you continue to evolve, like you were saying there. Next year you'll go back and
Mhm.
try this one again, and there's not really necessarily a destination because it's a journey of improving upon yourself. But I'm still curious to see basically what your future plans are. So you mentioned the Artic Ultra again. Are there other specific races that you have your eye on? I mean, I don't mind how far ahead we go in time with this, but just the things that are inspiring you from here, basically.
Yeah, so there are a few specific races I'm interested in. So I'd like to do the Tour de Giants. Unfortunately, I didn't get through the ballot for that this year. So I'd definitely like to do that. And I think next year I'm going to do the PTL. It's called the Petit Triomphalion, I think it is. So it's one of the UTMB races, but it's more of you do it as a pair or a threesome. So it's more of an adventure as opposed to a race. So it's the same type of thing, multi-day type of expedition. In terms of cold weather stuff, I'd love to do the Yukon Arctic Ultra, and maybe in the future that Iditarod as well. So that's 1,000 miles in Alaska. That's quite a big one, and maybe just some individual sort of personal, not so much races, but just things, sort of expeditions in various sort of cold weather climes. So I'd love to go to Greenland and do something there, some type of expedition. I'd love to go to Antarctica, but a lot of these things they cost a lot of money. They're not cheap. So realistically, you really have to sort of have sponsorship to do them. And yeah, outside of races, I just love adventure. I love being in the great outdoors and challenging myself. So I love mountain biking as well. So I've done things like adventure races before in the past, which is mountain biking, running, kayaking. So sort of multi-day mountain bike races and expeditions. So there's one over in Scotland called the Highland Trail 550. So that's 550 miles around the Highlands of Scotland. There's one called the Tour Divide, which is over in America. That's quite a big one. So that's basically from Canada to Mexico. And I'd love to go to do some sort of probably some bike tour and cycle touring around South America. I mean, I could talk forever about all of the things that I'd like to do. The list's probably endless.
Well, the thing is, you've already achieved so many things that very few people get the chance, and I'm sure there will be a lot more. I'm sure there will be a lot more because, like I said, it's a journey that doesn't really have an end as such. I mean, it's as long as your body is capable of doing it, you will be able to do it. And why not give it a shout out now to anyone listening, anyone who can sponsor this man or is interested in helping out with these journeys, please do so because obviously that can be good exposure for them and it helps you both. Um, we'll wrap things up fairly quickly. I wanted to ask one other thing just because in my mind it feeds into the mindset topic. You mentioned earlier about the nerve disorder on your back and you still have to work through that. Is
Yeah.
that something that you're still having to push through basically and you're still having to deal with that?
Yeah. So how it affects us now. So I haven't got any pain. So the pain, it goes through different stages. So the first stage was really, really intense pain in both of my shoulders. Not at the same time. I got it in one shoulder, recovered from that, and then about a year later, I got it in the other shoulder. So it starts off with intense pain and then muscle wasting. So I literally had no muscle in my arm at all, and then getting the muscle density back took a long time, and I'd also had numbness in my hands, so in my thumb and my forefinger. I had no feeling in there, so the feeling has mostly came back. I still have sort of numbness there, but one of the things I find now, I get cramp in my hands really easily. So even if I just try writing, I get cramp quite quickly. And on the bike sometimes, if it's warm and I'm sort of dehydrated, my hands cramp up quite easily. And I guess not ideal for cold conditions, but generally speaking, when I go out, my hands, those parts of my hands seem to get colder a lot more easily. So it's things I can manage. They're not stopping us from doing anything. It's just I'm just conscious of them, and it's just a case of managing it basically.
Yeah, well, I think in a way I mean, it's not very nice for you to go through it, but I also think it's inspirational as well because a lot of people let things like that stop them from, and I choose the word they let them stop them because obviously it is a choice to overcome that. And that side of things is, it's a big part of why I do these podcasts is to actually show people that a lot of the limits that we put on ourselves are not really there. They're actually just things created, in one way or another. And I think that's my reason for asking that question. It feeds into that. We'll wrap things up with one final point. Any other words of advice for aspiring runners or for people who want to pursue their dreams in general? Basically, I know that's quite a big question, but maybe a handful of things there would be great. And then we'll wrap things up. Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess what I would say to that is that most people, you get most satisfaction in life from overcoming some type of challenge, overcoming something, typically doing something that's hard and being successful. And that thing that's hard is different for everyone, and it changes throughout your life. So I guess just picking up from earlier, from not running at all to actually going out and just being able to run a couple of miles without stopping, that's a challenge that I've overcome, that other people can overcome, and then it's iterating on that. So if you had asked me if I'd be doing all of these things when I started running, I would think like, no, absolutely no way. But as you do these things, you get more confident, and your boundaries increase, and you find out about all of these other things. You'll do one race or one event, or even doesn't have to be a race. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to be competitive. It's just setting yourself a little challenge. So I'm going to go out and walk or run the Pennine or something like that, and then giving yourself a time period to do it, and then you do it in that time period and you think, oh, I've done this, what else can I do? So challenge is different for everyone, and so it doesn't have to be all these massive things, these massive races. Just give yourself a little challenge, set yourself a target, and then once you do that, it becomes infectious, it becomes addictive. You think, oh, well, I've done this little thing, which is a big thing at the time, but then when you look back, it thinks, oh well, how could I think that I couldn't have done that? And you just build on that confidence, and the more you do these things, like I say, it's infectious, and it's for me, it's what really sort of drives us and gives us motivation in life to do these things.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I mean, it's a absolutely great life lesson. Like I was saying earlier, it's really, as you're saying, people can put that into anything that that is a challenge for them individually. So, I mean, Rob, we've talked about a lot. I know with your adventures, we've probably only scratched the surface, but really, my aim for this was obviously the two sides. The fun stories from your races and the inspiration and the motivation, and we've got both of those and then some. I'm going to mention to our viewers that if they want to know more about what you're doing, they can look on your website as well, which is robbrooks.run. I think www.robbrooks.run. So you can check that out. Obviously, for our viewers, Rob is on social media as well, so you can have a look on there and find out more about what he's doing. I know you don't really do it for those reasons, but it is super inspiring, I think, for people to have a look and take some of that knowledge back. So other than that, my friend, thank you once again for making the time. Thank you for being an open book about obviously sort of the highs and the lows of these races in a way, isn't it? Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I hope you have as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I really have, Liam. It's really appreciated. It's been great speaking to you. Thanks very much.
No worries at all. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.